Welcome to Node Mode, the NFT podcast on digital art, where we talk with artists, collectors, and reasonably intelligent people about all things NFTs. As usual, nothing in this video is financial advice. We're not financial advisors, although OSF may have been in the past. We'll have to see. And the NFT space is incredibly risky, so always remember to do your own research. And if you like this content, hit the like button, subscribe, and share. Today, we get the honor of hanging out with OSF, who I believe has cemented himself as a legend in NFT history. OSF, welcome to the show.
Hey, no, what's up? Thanks for having me. Pleasure to be here.
And you're matching, like everything feels like it matches. You've got like the beautiful red sweater with the beautiful red light district stuff going on behind you. So well done on your wardrobe, you know.
Only my best efforts for you, man.
Oh, I love to hear it. I love to hear it. So we picked an interesting day to, not on purpose, but here we are. So I mean, most people I think know who you are in the space. So I'm going to skip past that because you're doing so much in the space. But let's start with like current events. So today is March 10th, 2023, and things are actually happening in the outside world that are kind of a big deal. So we got banks shutting down again, and people are wondering what's going to happen with the macro situation in crypto. I'd love to get your thoughts on like what's happening with, the regular financial world and then how that's going to impact our bags.
Yeah, it's funny because today was supposed to be a big day because we would get payrolls numbers, we get some labor market numbers, and to be honest with you, everyone's completely forgotten about it because of everything that's been going on with Silicon Valley Bank. And honestly, I genuinely had never heard of Silicon Valley Bank until about 24 hours ago. And I had no idea this whole thing was cooking for a long time, or for a while, for a few days, I guess, and how it all just like kind of came to a head very aggressively in a short time frame. But that's the thing about the world right now. We talk about these black swan events and fat tails and all this crazy shit happening. And today I was thinking, like, how many black swans in such a short space of time does it take until they're not even really black swans anymore because they happen so frequently. But look, like macro wise, I think we felt like we were out of the woods come in January, and there was some light at the end of the tunnel, and then data started going the wrong way again. And even like today, we had the payrolls number today came in ahead of expectations for like the 7th or 8th month in a row, which is concerning from the inflation standpoint. It's concerning from the Fed's monetary policy standpoint. So things aren't really looking that great. I think for me, last year was about like accumulating risk at low prices and dollar cost averaging. I think this year is the same, but I think like, I don't know, like I feel like prices aren't low enough for me to really want to buy things yet. Like last year you could buy Ether, 900, or the S&P 500 was like 3.6K. And I'm not saying we should get back to those levels, but when you had that opportunity just a few months ago, it doesn't seem that enticing right now with the way things are. So for me, it's just a case of like kind of sitting on my hands and not trying to FOMO into any trades or time any bottoms or tops and that kind of stuff. But it's, compared to January, I would have to say I'm a little bit disappointed with the way things have come out because it felt like we were getting back onto the right path, and the data just seems to have not gone the way we wanted it to.
Yeah, I feel you. I think DC today, DC Investor was just like, well, it's going to be a long year. Like we kind of like have been mentally preparing ourselves, I feel like, in crypto to say, okay, let's get through the long winter. But it felt like most of it was past, and it turns out most of it was not past. And the winter might extend a little longer than we had hoped. So yeah, totally agree with you there. Okay, so I want to jump in to more about your like involvement in the space, because essentially I think you might be one of there's probably like 5 people or less that does what you do, which is like you're everything. So you're an artist, and you're like an analyst, and you are a trader, and you have a fund, and you have an NFT project. So let's start with like, how do you even like manage what you're doing? I'm really curious. And then we're probably going to have to just dissect each one of these things and go deep.
How do I manage it? It's a good question. Honestly, sometimes it's tough. Like I wake up probably around like 5:30 or 6 in the morning, and then I just do like the market report stuff and do a bit of reading. And then I probably finish working at like 8 or 9 p.m. So it's actually quite, yeah. It's not probably not that different to a lot of people who are doing things in this space, or building projects or whatever it is. But like when I quit banking and I started doing this stuff, I was like, oh, this is great. Like I can sleep 9 hours. I can work whenever I want. But me being me, and I guess like Mando being Mando as well, we just don't really know how to chill, and we just got ourselves involved in a few different things. So it's tough to manage. I think the answer is you have to multitask. You have to do a few things at the same time, and it's possible. It's doable in this space, and it's something that I used to do a lot in my old job as well. So, but look, man, I'm not going to lie. Like, especially this year, there's been points where I'm like, I'm doing this thing, I've got to do this thing, and then I've forgot to go to this meeting or whatever, and like it is like it gets tough at times. And I think for us, like there's 3 people in our team at Canary Labs, and I think we just need to expand our team really to be able to be a bit more efficient.
Yeah, that would make sense. So let's talk about you as an artist, because I think it's just such a cool arc, right? Like you're doing all this stuff, but then you're like, hey, I like creating as well. So do you, at this point, does creating the art kind of feel like an outlet, or do you have to like set aside the time and be like, okay, I'm actually working as an artist from this period to this period? I'm curious how you're managing all of this while still creating, some pretty awesome art.
Yeah, so not many people know this, and I think people, when they see me, they might think, "Oh, he was like first and foremost a trader, and then maybe like an NFT collector." But actually, when I was younger, I used to draw and paint quite a lot, and when I was a teenager, I actually created a ton of digital art. Like I was on DeviantArt, and so that was actually like what I used to do before this stuff. And back then, you could never really, there was no idea of like monetizing it, or there was no crypto or anything like that. So I just did it because I liked doing it, and I liked kind of being a part of those online communities. And for me, it was a pastime. And then turned 18, went to university, like discovered alcohol and all the other fun things in life. And I just, I thought it wasn't cool anymore. So I just stopped doing it. But when I came back into NFTs, I just had the itch to start creating again for the same reasons, just because it was something that I actually liked doing. Like I have like a interesting imagination, and it's always like a nice challenge to try and put that onto canvas. And I started doing it again just as a pastime or as a hobby because I enjoyed doing it. And I didn't really expect to have any success with it, and that was never the intention. Fast forward to now, obviously it's become this great big thing that I focus on quite a lot, and it has changed. Like compared to this time last year when I was like, hey, I have like a few hours to kill, let me just pick up my iPad and draw something I feel like drawing. Now it's like, oh, I've got to like create this thing for this project and this thing for this project, and it feels a bit more like deadline driven, and it feels a bit more like work, or not chore is the wrong word, but it feels a bit more like work, which is not really the way I want it to feel. So I think with that in mind going forward, I want to just like pull it back to like what it was for me a year ago, what it was for me 15 years ago, when I was just like, I just want to create things out of enjoyment. And then if people want to go and buy it, then great. If not, then whatever. I don't like it. It is what it is. But I did get sucked into that. Oh, hey, do you want to do a one-of-one for this project? Or hey, do you want to like, help me with this collection? And hey, like you should do this collection. And then I was like, it made it, doing all those things and working to deadlines kind of made it not fun. And so I'd like to put it back, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like that feels like it's the trajectory of every artist, right? Like eventually it's like, oh, well, you're in Sotheby's, so like, hey, better start doing some stuff and trying to build your brand and doing cool things. So that's really cool. And I love that, yeah, you want to keep it that for yourself, right? And that's probably why, I mean, for me anyway, like that's why I got a wrecked guy. Actually, I got a wrecked guy because they were free if you had like an X copy, right? Or something like and so I got like a couple of them holding on to them. And I'm like, everybody likes, I mean, I love the art because it just feels just so like authentic. And, it's like, okay, it's OSF doing his thing and I like what he's doing. And so you have that like authentic vibe of like, you're not trying to do anything that isn't you, right? Which I think is really cool. So I guess for my own selfish interests, I got to learn more about how, like, I think I've got a Degens access pass or two, and I've got a wrecked guy. And I'm always like, oh, should I look into like the red light district stuff? Like there's so much happening here. How do you feel like everything like kind of integrates with one another when it comes to everything that you're working on? And so I guess that would include, you've got wrecked guy, you've got your own just one-of-one art that you like to do, you've got Degens access pass, and then you've got like Rug Radio that you're participating in as well. Does all of this kind of, do you try and say, hey, all this is totally separate, or are you like, hey, like some of these things will feed into each other?
No, there's definitely a lot of synergies, and Degens was the first NFT project we created, and it was a failure. So we just converted it into something that we thought we could have an edge in, or provide useful information on. So now it's like this whole NFT research platform thing. And when I made Rect Guy, and I wanted it to be a free mint, because again, it was just like, it wasn't meant to be like this thing that I was going to make money off. I just wanted to make the art, make it a free mint. But I was like, who should I give the free mint to? So I was like, well, look, everyone who bought Degens back in the day in summer 21, like those were our OG supporters, and anyone still holding them, I viewed as like the guys that supported us from the beginning and still do. So that ended up being like the access pass into like getting this mint, and we thought that was a cool idea. So we carried on with that, and we did a drop with Alien Queen called Tabs that gave you were able to access that as a free mint from holding a Degens access pass. So that's kind of like the Degens things. But then Rex Guy just became its own thing, and I would feel like I'd say Degens is its own thing now. I think Rex Guy / my art would be two things that go together or hand in hand, and I think there are mechanics there that bring them together. And I guess like it's mostly my art and stuff, and a lot of my ideas, but we do get a lot of help from the rest of the team, and Mando has some good ideas and inspiration for that as well. But that's its own thing. And then Rug Radio really is like a great platform for us to accentuate the projects that we're working on, and be able to just discuss things on a daily basis. So like they're all separate projects, but they do benefit off one another in certain ways, I think. And yeah, they're definitely synergetic.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful to kind of view, and I've definitely experienced that for sure. So I mean, I love the Alien Queen. Those tabs looked rad.
Yeah.
That was an awesome airdrop. So everybody loves good art. Okay, so next question for you. I want to dive into Canary Labs because I'm super stoked that I actually got a hold of you before you made like this massive trade, because who knows what would have happened afterwards. But like, let's just start with like let's start with the giant trade, and then let's take a step back and go into like how you think about doing what you like, how you think about investing in things in the time frame. So, for those that aren't aware, you sold like 9 million plus worth of Bored Apes just like a few weeks ago. The most epic trade in NFT history, in my opinion. Tell me about like just the entire experience. Like maybe when you minted them all to when you decided, hey, it's time to cash in.
Yeah, it's I mean, we had a pretty incredible journey with that. So my first interaction with Apes was when I minted them. I minted 150 of them. At the time I was living in New York, and I just quit my job. Got home pretty late, and I was working that job for about 7 or 8 years. So you have this like weird like emotional feeling, and I kind of had like a full like YOLO like thing in me. And to be honest with you, it could have been any project, any other project that day. I probably would have like aped it like I did. But I saw it on Twitter. I saw a bunch of people were minting them, and then I went onto the website, boredapeyachtclub.com, and I have to say it was like the first NFT project that I'd saw. And up until this point, I'd only really bought art. I'd never bought any of these collectibles or PFP projects. Yeah. And it's the first one that I saw that actually referenced like a members club. It was like, hey, this is the yacht club. And like the website was done really well. Everything looked professional. And I know like people are used to that now, but back then, all you really had was punks, and that was it. And you never really had like a proper thing that looked professional. So I just got like the vibes of like, these guys know what they're doing. And I think I just minted it at the right time, because it had been open for 2 or 3 days, and then I think I minted like 20 or something like that. I could see it was like minting out very quickly. So I was like, and you can see in OpenSea they were trading higher and pricing higher. So I was like, look, I'm just gonna like drain my wallet and mint as many as I can, because worst case scenario, like I'm gonna make like a 2x or a 3x from these. So I minted 150 of them. I then sold them, all of them, within the space of about a week.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I thought I was a hero. I was like, wow. Like, and I had some really good ones, man. I had a gold one with like a beanie and a pipe. I had at the 13th rarest one, which was like a 4-trait ape with blue beams. I had some really good stuff that I just sold way too cheap, obviously. and they obviously just kept going higher and higher and higher. And actually, the funny story is, like, I was considering keeping them, and Mando was like, "Dude, just sell them, like get out of them, take the money." And I was like, "Yeah, you're probably right." And this is around May 21 when crypto started to crash and everything, and NFTs started to crash, and I wasn't really fully convinced of NFTs then. So I was like, "Yeah, look, let me just take the money and move on." But you know, they then just kept going higher and higher, and in July, Mando texted me and was like, "Hey, we should buy some apes." And I was just like, "Dude, you told me to sell all of them like 2 months ago. Like, I'm not buying them. I'm not going to touch them." So he actually went and degened and bought 69 apes over the summer. And in that time, I had bought some one of one art. I'd bought some like I had a couple of an X copy one of one, and
Dang.
yeah, like some good like art stuff over the summer. And then in September, we were like, "Look, we have quite complementary assets. Why don't we just join everything together and just manage it together, basically as a joint personal collection?" So that's actually how we got the 72 apes. We actually then bought 3 more apes with some liquidity, and that's how we ended up with the 72 apes. Which we held. We held for a long time. This was September 21, so we held them all the way up until now for about 18 months. And to be honest with you, we were just always really bullish on Yuga. Like I remember we reached out to Gordon and Gaga and we're like, "Hey, look, we own loads of apes. Like, would you guys mind having a phone call?" And I remember we were still working at Barclays at the time. We had to like make an excuse to leave the office, and it was like freezing cold, and we were like standing on this bridge with the phone on speakerphone and could like barely hear what they were saying. And they didn't give us any alpha or anything, but you could just tell like these guys had a very clear vision and they knew what they were doing and they were going to go set it out. That was right when they got Gaio Siri on board as well, and they gave us our explanation and reasoning as to that. So we just felt like, from just speaking to them, we just felt really bullish about those two guys as like a duo, as founders, and you know, everything that we thought would happen happened. So we made money on the airdrops, the ape coin, the other side land, and we've always wondered, like, how do we sell this? Like, how do we monetize this? If one day we sell 1 or 2, everyone's going to sell and front run us. Maybe you can find a buyer, but you know, if you go to Sotheby's or Christie's, you have to pay loads of big fees. Anyone who would buy that many assets in one go would want a big discount. You then had the ability to borrow off the back of your apes and at like 80% LTV. So I was like, well, we could just borrow and 20% would be the cost for us to exit the whole thing. But then you obviously had this blur farming stuff come about, and we were watching it and we noticed that there was just like so much liquidity in all these collections. And for a couple of weeks, we were like, wow, we could literally sell all our apes at 72 ETH and it wouldn't even move the floor. It wouldn't move the price. Yeah. And we never really thought we would do it. We were just like, nah, like, you know, whatever. We'll just keep, we like Yuga stuff. We'll just keep holding it. But we just kept thinking about it more and more. And the price started going up because everyone was like overcutting each other to try and like, to try and farm and get the points. And then one day got 78 ETH and we just like, you know what, let's just take our profits here. Like it's been a good trade. We made a lot of money. We still have a bunch of Yuga stuff. It just felt like it was a good opportunity to get the liquidity to execute that. And so we did. And, you know, I just went on Blur and in about 5 minutes, just like clicked everything and it was done. It was crazy.
It's amazing. Like, yeah, like it feels like, you know, only with Blur did that become possible, right? It was like this moment in time, and only probably, I mean, who knows how this all shakes out. Hopefully there's strong liquidity, you know, in our space for a while. But I think because obviously of the airdrop potential and the farming rewards, you know, you had this like perfect window, and seemed like you executed it absolutely perfectly. So what's next for Canary Labs? Like, are you guys just saying, have you decided like, okay, we're gonna, you know, just kind of hold a bunch of this in cash? I know I've seen you've bought a couple Fidenzas. Congratulations. That's, you know, exciting. I also noticed you're putting in some offers on some punks, you know, as I'm tracking your wallet. So I love to see it, but would love to know, like, yeah, how are you guys approaching the next year as Canary Labs?
Yeah, I think we sold everything, and we sold my 20% for taxes, which I'm glad I did because ETH is down like 15% since we did that trade. And I thought a long time about what is the best trade at that scale over the next 2 years or 3 years, and I do think ETH probably outperforms most NFTs. Not all NFTs, most NFTs. And look, you're always going to get the random NFT that will do 100x or 1000x. But it's one thing when you're playing with like a few ETH here and there, but when you're playing with like 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 ETH, that you can't just like chuck it all into, I don't know, like fucking Vitalik NFTs or
Right.
checks or whatever, right? So from that perspective, I was like, well, I think I probably would just want to keep like 90% of this in ETH and put it in a multi-sig and just like, lock away the hardware wallets and just not touch it for 2 years. My goal to myself is like, I'm going to try my best not to touch it for 5 years. But I think if ETH gets back to 5K, then I would probably sell maybe like 10% of it or something. And just not think about it. Like, don't worry about it. Don't think about it and put that away. Then, there's some NFTs that I've always really wanted to own just to own them. And Fidenzas are one of them. Like man, like I was literally gonna buy them at like 0.5 ETH, and I got home and DC investor like just spread them all the way up to 2 ETH or something like that. And then ever since then, I just kept going higher and I just kept missing it. And it's something that I really loved at the beginning. I've actually grown to appreciate a lot. And actually, Tyler Hobbs was in London yesterday, so I actually met him yesterday. He's like
nice.
really great guy, like super down to earth. So I was like, yeah, I just genuinely really love the art and the story behind it and how they created. So I bought one, and then I was like, shit, like I really like it so much. What am I going to do if like one day they go to some crazy price and I have to judge whether I wanna sell it or not? So I was like, well, let me just buy two. Then at least I can like sell one and always keep one, basically. And I've had a notoriously on and off relationships with punks, and I had a couple of punks. Sold one quite high, then like I dumped one at the floor, and I just think I mean, when it comes down to it, punks are one of those things you just have to own, I think. And I don't own one right now. We haven't owned one, and it's kind of like not owning one was like a little bit of a protest trade, but I just I looked through it and I looked through all the different traits and stuff, and I think I don't really want to own a floor punk, but I'd like to own one that I like the look of. And I found a cool one which has like 3D glasses that with like an earring and stuff, and kind of like unshaven. It looks really sick. So I was like, that one looks cool, and let me just bid on that. So, but I didn't power lift the punks like I did the Fidenzas, because I think there's a bit more liquidity there, and I think hopefully I can get one that I like, and just again, like these purchases are hopefully ones that I will just like have in the vault forever, sort of thing. So.
I love that. I love that. And I tend to agree, right? Like 90, that's probably wise for everybody to remember again. And it's like I go through these phases where I'm like, ETH is going to outperform, all these NFTs. And then we all still think we're so smart. So we're like, yeah, but I've got the edge. So I'm going to go get some of these NFTs because they're going to outperform ETH. But I think in terms of like the long run, I actually did exactly what you did. Probably at like, less than 1% of the scale, which is I locked away. I just like put a bunch of ETH on a hardware wallet, and like I made a big show of it even on Twitter. I like, put it in a Ziploc bag. I like wrapped it in a Velcro thing and was like, you can't open it, and it's like, yeah, it's like sitting in a, like safety deposit box. I'm like, and I wrote on the ledger, like, don't touch until ETH is at 15K. And it's like, who knows if ETH gets there, but I'm really trying to hold it and not fritter away, like spend it all on NFTs. So I totally am with you. So from a strategic standpoint, when we look at like how Canary Labs is going to like operate moving forward, I guess, what do you and in the past, I guess I should say, what are some of the criteria that you look at before you're deciding to make a purchase? And then, what's kind of your, I mean, obviously the Apes were a 2-year time frame, but do you have kind of a time frame in mind when you buy?
Yeah, it really depends. I think the stuff that we bought last year, we did buy some Azuki, but we bought like a Nakamoto card. We bought some one of one art. We looked at rare Pepes, and I think it's evolved. Like what we think makes a good NFT or a good purchase, I think, is an evolving story. And the story in 2021 was like, oh, like it was worth buying some of these things that were like, we are gonna have this like big metaverse game, or we're gonna you were kind of like investing in startups, basically. That's the way I viewed it. And anything that you could see had big brand loyalty, I think had a lot of IP in it. So investing in like the IP story of NFT projects, I think was a great 2021 trade. But that was obviously the outcome of like a lot of different macro things that had to happen for that to be a good trade. And that landscape changed in 2022. And we realized that we were like, oh shit, like actually most of these guys, a lot of these guys aren't going to make it, but that doesn't mean NFTs are not valuable. And it's what I learned, like, when we think about like punks or Videndas or rare pepes and a lot of this stuff, it's like, if you buy that stuff, you really are buying a piece of art that has historical value and
Yeah.
cultural significance. And this is the thing with punks, right? You're not dependent on Lava Labs or Yuga Labs to do something to return value to you as a holder. The value of CryptoPunk is CryptoPunk. Like, you own a piece of history, and that's like a much easier trader investment to have. And I think that's why we bought the Nakamoto Rare Pepe card last year, because like that's one of the first NFTs ever. Actually, it's the first card in the Rare Pepe card. It's from 2016, and it has so much cultural relevance because it's like Pepe the Frog and then Satoshi Nakamoto, the Bitcoin reference and stuff. And for me, that's a no-brainer. And it's not like we buy that and we're going to be affected if like Doodles Labs decide to go on Flow instead of Ethereum, or we're going to be affected because Clonex decides to like start selling its sneakers rather than like giving them to holders, or or we're going to be affected because like the SEC investigates Yuga Labs. So you can just buy it as you would buy a piece of art. So I think that's something to be aware of. And I'm not saying the right thing is always to like buy things where you don't have to rely on creators, because that was a good trade in 2021. I think what I'm trying to say is you have to be understanding of the current macro situation and which themes will prevail and which ones won't. And I still think, as it stands, you had a ton of NFT project, big teams, high cost bases, and a lot of them probably sold the story to investors on like, hey, look at my royalty revenue stream, and now, now that's gone well. So I think they're in a tough spot, because you've like, your value for holding that NFT is like, I'm waiting for them to like build this game, or I'm waiting for them to like build this brand, or I'm waiting for them to like do this event. And a lot of these people will actually lose the ability to do these things, which then in turn makes the NFTs like, not worth very much. And it's like, who is the artist for Fidenza, Tyler Hobbs? Like, who is the artist for CryptoPunks, Lava Labs? Who is the artist for Clonex? Like, I don't know, I guess like Takashi Murakami did some of them. Who's the artist for Pudgy Penguins? Like, I don't know. Who's the artist for Sappy Sills? I don't know.
Yeah.
You see what I mean? So then it's like, well, if you strip all that other stuff out of it, then no one's really buying it for the art, and then it becomes a more difficult story. So it really depends on the situation, and like, it's something like Doodles, like you have Burnt Toast, who's a good artist and renowned artist, so there is some artistic value there. But I just think being understanding of like the backdrop, and then using that to then make your capital allocation decisions, I think is very important. I think a lot of people just get sucked into the metas all the time.
Yeah, I'm very guilty of that for sure. What I've done though, I mean, I feel like we're very, very much on the same page. Like at the beginning of the year, or even like earlier last year, I started getting more and more, like, I entered the space because of art, and then I got swept away in the PFP mania. And then like I returned to my roots, and then I'm just like mostly just want art now. And that's almost all that I have. And so I'd be curious to know, like, what are your thoughts on the future of art in the NFT space? Like right now, we've got like the AI meta is like on fire, and everyone's kind of gen art is kind of slowly bleeding. What how do you see things like playing out here in the future in the next like year or so?
The AI art thing is such an interesting one, because it's so contested, and I think a lot of people are like, oh, well, that's not real art. Someone just wrote in a few prompts and then created this. But like you have someone like Taylor Swift, who's a singer-songwriter, and she does both, and it's great. Then you might have someone like, I don't know, Justin Bieber, who's a performer, and someone else writes the songs. So that's kind of how I view AI art. It's like, it's not like someone who created AI art has no talent, because they had to think of the idea, they had to think of the concept, and they just used a tool to create the output. But is someone who thinks of the concept and also has the ability to create the output themselves more talented? I think the answer is yes. Should one be priced higher than the other? Well, I think that's up in the air, I think. With AI art, I think something that is really impressive is artists who maybe aren't just using DALI or Mid-Journey or whatever, and like writing their own code and actually creating it from the ground up. And there are a few guys out there who do that. Like you should check out this artist called Orkan, who I bought a one-of-one from a couple of weeks ago when I was in Dubai, and like his stuff is insane. Like he's like pulled in like thousands of photos from the British Library, like wrote the whole code to like read in like all the images, and like then recreated his own paintings based on that. And that's something that he's created like completely from scratch, from the ground up. And that kind of stuff I think is really impressive, and I think has a big future in the world of digital art. Because if imagine you're like a normie or a simp and you don't really understand this stuff, and you just hear these terms like AI and generative and crypto and blockchain and code, like anything like that, like the idea of like AI art on chain, I think is just like hits a lot of like buzz zones. And I just think when some of these really rich people who are like, oh, I need to allocate 1% of my family office to this, that can be millions or tens of millions of dollars, and they don't dig that deep into it. So I think a lot of this stuff has a big future, and especially AI art, I think will continue to rise.
Remind me the name of the artist you mentioned. Was it Orkan? How do you spell their name?
Yeah, ORK.
ORK.
HAN.
Okay, I'm just gonna make a note. Maybe I'm definitely gonna check them out. Orkan. It looks like Orkan Art on Twitter. Yeah,
that's right. Yeah.
Oh, they follow me. Look at that.
Okay.
I'm definitely gonna look into that. Thanks for the alpha. So how do you feel like that impacts? Conversely, like how do you feel like AI art kind of impacts generative art, like that whole meta and idea, or do you think it has any impact at all?
I think that's a good question. It feels like if you are a generative art maxi, you're probably sitting there thinking like, oh damn, like these guys are like taking my cake now a little bit. I don't think it will, in the long run, I don't think it will impact it greatly. I do think right now it feels like there's this attention grab, and because the timeframes and the messes are so short, NFTs, it's like, oh, I've just lost this attention. But I think one of the biggest things with generative art and the biggest problems that I've had with it, and why I didn't collect loads of it to begin with, is because I think, number one, there's like so much supply, and you're like, how do I know what to buy? It's very overwhelming. And the second thing is like, how much of it is like really truly aesthetically pleasing, and how many people are digging into like the code behind it and how it was created. And that's why Fidenzas and to an extent Ringers are like still doing well and still so renowned, because they look really good. Like Fidenzas are actually the only NFT that my wife has looked at and said she likes. And for me, that's a good test. That's a good bellwether, right? So I think that's one of the things. I think you got to create more things that like, oh, this looks really good, and people I actually like the way it looks. It would fit well in my home, but it's really cool how it was created by code. And I think that's one of the problems that I've personally had with Gen Art. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, this looks really sick and this looks really sick, but just as a complete simp looking at it, I was like, oh, how do I differentiate between all the stuff? And I think that was the problem there.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I love that you mentioned Ringers, because it's like the one grail asset that I bought for like 4 ETH. And so I'm just holding that sucker forever. But one thing I will say about Ringers is just how well that they seem to be aging to me. Like, and of course I'm totally biased, but I'm like, the pure simplicity, and like you can just see them when you see them in a good set, like displayed. I'm like, you can just see it so well. And that's like my only thing where I take that and say, like, versus a lot of Fidenzas, I'm like, Fidenzas are awesome and beautiful. I'm not going to deny that. And I wish that I had one, and I deeply regret not buying them. But like, some of them just look so busy, it's like you're just like, okay, there's a bunch of stuff happening here. And
what's
like,
going on? Yeah.
You can't accuse a ringer of doing that. You know what I mean? They're just like so simple, and you can see it from a mile away. It's so pure. And the concept just demonstrates gen art so well. I will definitely like toot the horn on Ringers as long as I can. But I also think, we got a question from Mike DeFi saying thoughts on squiggles. I will say this, like, because of exactly what OSF mentioned, like, what do you buy? There's too much stuff. I noticed that I have like kind of like this mini long tail collection of all these little art blocks, curated or presents projects. And I've got like one of this and one of that and one of this and one of that. And none of them, like, I'm like, I don't know if anybody is going to remember these in 10 years. So I sold a lot of stuff so I could buy a squiggle, because I'm like, that's the one thing that has the historical provenance and the brand value. If you think of art blocks, Squiggle is it. And so if Squiggles don't make it, we're probably in trouble in general as an industry. But would love to get your thoughts on Squiggles, OSF.
Yeah, like squiggles they're so iconic. It's one of those things like in my opinion, good art, and good art is obviously very subjective, is you just recognize what it is instantly. You recognize who the artist is, or what it is, or what it stands for. And squiggles for life.
Squiggles for life, Marty McFly.
I'm a big Back to the Future fan, so respect there. Yeah, squiggles are just iconic, and you're right. Like they have this relevance of being I think it was the first art blocks drop. Am I right in saying that?
There were like 3 on day one, and I don't know which one he actually dropped first, but I mean that is his, right? That's Snowfro's art. So they're like Genesis by DCA. That one might be like the first one, but I mean there were like 3 that dropped on day one. So yeah, it was there from the beginning, and it's considered I don't know how you get more kind of like the brand and the signature of the entire thing is a squiggle. So
yeah.
Damn,
okay, I need to get a squiggle.
You do. One thing, like over the last several months, it was like eating away at me. And I think it was Zeneca on this podcast. He was like, squiggles are the CryptoPunks of generative art. And he's like, they are so undervalued, even though there's a higher supply. I was like, okay, yeah. I'm like, he's making it sound like I'd be like dumb not to buy one, of course, but easier said than done. They're not super cheap. But I totally agree with you. Like, I just think that they're iconic and they're as brandable as it gets, right? So,
yeah.
Okay. So we've talked a little bit about that. I guess I'm curious to know what, you mentioned Orkan as an artist that you like. Give us some things that you're looking at right now. Just, whether it's at Canary or just personally, what projects do you find interesting, maybe on the PFP side, if any? And then what artists do you feel like, deserve to get a little bit more shine?
Yeah, like I mentioned Orkan, obviously. I think you gotta check out, if you check out his like Eastern Promises collection on OpenSea, and then there's this like one of one there that I bought. So I'm definitely like shilling the thing that I bought, but it's this video and it shows you how like the whole process of like all the code and how everything was like created from start to finish. And I think he's actually going to have a documentary that will come out soon. So I think he's definitely one to watch. And like, look, Rafiq Anadol has become like this huge star in that world. And I think Orkan, this guy is someone who's like just as smart and is creating some really, really cool shit. So he's definitely one to watch from the artist side of things. I love the stuff that Alien Queen makes, and she's a good friend, and we've one of the first people that I met in NFTs. But I just think her style is so unique. There's a lot of like trippy art and stuff out there, but the stuff that she draws and like her line work and the colors she uses, it's just like so. It has this like big like vibrancy feeling that's so unique. Actually, that skateboard behind me, she sent to me because I bought one for one of ones, which is pretty cool. But
that looks awesome. Yeah,
like I think her stuff's just incredible. It's really, really incredible. So I think she's another person who I think is one to watch out for.
Did I find the right one on Orkan here on OpenSea? I got it through the link.
That's him. Yeah, that's the one.
This is cool.
Yeah, so these Eastern Promises things, like these were actually all like he scanned in like thousands of images from the British Library, wrote the code to basically read what the images were. And when you have a moment, that video on the bottom, the second row on the left, shows you the whole process of it. So it like reads in like all these images, and puts it into like the data. Yeah, like this. It's really insane. And he wrote this whole code by himself, by the way. But like this thing was like completely created by him. So that's the part I find really amazing. And I saw this piece in Dubai, and there's this big like 360 screen thing that they had it up on. It was just like, it was really insane.
That looks like just an immense amount of data, like just the sheer like processing power needed to do something like this is kind of blowing my mind. Wow.
Exactly. And you see all the code on the left hand side, like that's reading everything in.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's insane.
Wow. Okay.
Something
Yeah,
really
they've got
awesome.
a good link tree too, so you can go.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to explore more over there as well. I think that's the wrong one. Um, cool. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we got Orcon, you got Alien Queen.
Yeah.
What else you got for us?
PFP wise, it's a tough one, you know. I've really been struggling there because I kind of like, I would like to like add something. I do really, of all the like blue chip projects as we call them, I do really like Azuki because I think they have actually created a niche that is different to everything else, and I think they've fostered a community that is has like some like ape vibes about it, where they're very loyal, they're very like die hard, and I think that's because they've like um taken the right steps for it. And say, you know, you can say what you want about Zagabond, and he's had his rights and he's had his wrongs, but I think compared to other people, I think he gets it. You know, like I like for me, I'd rather have him leading a project. I'd rather have Gordon leading a project or Garg leading a project than I would when they're like, oh, we just hired this like CEO of some big Web2 company, because I think those guys don't get it, and the Web3 native guys do. And that's a project where I think you have the main guy who made that what it is still there, and would like to think they're coming up with some cool stuff. I don't know, but I think that's what I'd have my eye on. Like the thing is, it's still 14 or 15 ETH, right? Like it's not like it's a cheap entry point, and it hasn't been beaten up as much as some of the other projects. So you know, the market is probably agreeing with me. So I'm not saying anything like new there, but that's one I think is a good one to watch out for. It's tough, really, like at the lower end PFP wise. I don't really know. I'm just looking down on my screen now. But nothing really stands out to me.
Yeah.
Something that's exciting. I don't know.
I agree. It's kind of hard because when people always ask, they're like, "Hey, what can you get for, what should I get for under 2 ETH?" And I'm kind of like, at this stage, if it's still under 2 ETH, I don't know. I'm not, it's like unless there's been kind of a nice, like a nice slow run up where it hasn't had a big dip, which, we got to give props to Rect Guy, because you guys have just been like, just steadily grinding and like very, very steady. Like never broke out to like, hey, these are 10 ETH, right? But like, you have actually I feel like you've got a real community there, which is cool. And there's it just seems like the least likely one to go to zero that's under 2 ETH would be my there's my huge
I
compliment,
love
right?
that.
Like
I love that. That's awesome.
I'm like simultaneously like realizing like, yeah, I'm not a fan of anything under 2 ETH. And I'm like, well, Rect Guy, I actually own one and I do like, but it's like everything is still, yeah. The problem with the Zuki too, I'm with you. It's like, it seems kind of priced in because it's like they've got the vibe, they've got the brand, people like it. And so like, there's not a deal to be had there. What are your thoughts on Pudgies? There seem to be a lot of like momentum there.
Yeah.
So I'm curious on how you see it. Like I'm just starting the episode he did with Carly on overpriced JPEGs, and he sounds sharp. And I'm also like, IP, I'm still a little wary on because like I've built, and sold physical products, and like royalties is like that's a very small number that you probably end up with, and then if you're splitting it amongst holders, it's the number gets smaller and smaller. But I could be wrong. But yeah, what are your thoughts on Pudgies?
That's the other one that I would say I think I really like and has a really good chance of making it, if you like. I think it's a bit cliche to say this, but people always say, like invest in people, put your money behind smart people. And I think look, Luca's fucking good, man. Like he knows his shit. He's had successes in the past. He's extremely determined, and you just know like he's the kind of person who's not gonna stop at failure, right? He's not gonna give up until he makes it work. And whether that's this whole IP thing that they're building now with the toys, etc., which I think he has at least some experience in, or whether it's something different, I don't know. But you just know he's gonna make it work. And I think I would say there's a bright future for Pudgies, and I think that's trade. I think that's why a lot of people get behind it. Like everyone's behind Luca on it, and it's rare to see founders who like him, who kind of like wear their heart on their sleeves a little bit, like the way he does, and just has this like determination and drive. And honestly, like I've met him, I think maybe a couple of times, and at every NFT thing, like he has his whole team there with him. They'll have their Pudgy Penguins hoodies, and they're very much like all business the whole time. And I like that.
Nice, yeah.
They're on it. They're switched on. Like sometimes you're wondering like what are founders doing? Are they just like on a yacht or like driving around a Lambo or whatever? But like those guys for sure are working 24/7, absolutely. And so I think they have a really good chance of making it because of him.
I like that. Yeah, I would tend to agree. Definitely, in terms of if it's going to be a PFP, the really all you can do is look at the founders and the team and just say, okay, I hope that it's going to go in the right direction. So, definitely agree with you there. Okay, what I got two more questions for you. The next one is this whole NFTs on Bitcoin thing going on. Do you are you excited about it or are you not?
When I first heard about it, I was like, nah, no, like this is just another meta thing.
Yeah.
And then I started reading about it and this whole idea of like, oh, you can like inscribe a piece of art or something onto a piece of Bitcoin, is just, I think is like how they phrase it, or Satoshi or whatever. Um, that was interesting. And like conceptually, it was actually different to NFTs. It was different to the idea of like, hey, here's a token that points to an IPFS link, which is where your image is stored. This was like a different thing where like, I don't know, whoever explained it to me or wherever I read it was, they just told the story really well. In my head, it was like, oh, like I was imagining like I just picked up like a coin that was like a piece of Bitcoin and like I just like put my signature on it and now it's there for like the rest of time. Like that concept I think is really cool.
Yeah.
And it was a great idea. So then I like looked at buying ordinal punks and stuff and I looked at what can I buy with the ordinals? And then I realized that so much of the stuff was just like copy pastes of existing projects. And even like the ordinal punks were just like mutant punks, right? So
Yeah.
I was like, you know, if it wasn't for that, I genuinely would have bought something with the lowest inscription number. If it was like hey, this is like a just brand new thing that a piece of art that someone has created on ordinals, and I was like, cool, like that. This is now interesting, and I think the ordinals guys, they really missed a chance to create a new iconic collection. They really missed a chance there, and could have been anything. It could have been like, I don't know, like could have been, hey, here's like a collection of like 2K eggs or something like that, or like 2K pieces of cabbage, some random shit like that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. Just
you have
something
like
to define it, right? Yeah.
exactly, like you could have, you know, and it's like, cool, this is like a sub 1K inscription number, and it's just like 900 cabbages. Like that would have been amazing, and it would have been funny. It would have been this great meme, but it's like, oh, I can buy like inscription number 654, but it's just like a mutant punk. And I think ordinal diehard people will tell you like the art doesn't even really matter. It's just the fact that you have a low serial number. But that falls into this argument where a lot of people, and you see a lot of these guys shilling these historical NFTs. And I think like for me, it has to not only be historically significant, but it also has to be culturally significant. And like if I find like a piece of mud or like a shard of a coin from 1,000 years ago, I probably don't get any money for it because no one really cares, right?
Yeah.
And if you're pumping some project just because it was like the third project and it's still like close to zero, it's because guess what? No one liked it in the first place anyway. It had no relevance. So I don't believe like just because something is old, it has value. And I think most of those people pushing them are kind of like peddling it a little bit. And I think with ordinals, they just missed this great opportunity to actually create something iconic. And maybe there are things out there that I missed. I don't know, but I just couldn't find anything that I wanted to own.
Oh man, it's like you and I are fully aligned, man, on both sides. Which was like, I think you actually you respond on one of my. I had like a real spice. My spiciest tweet of all time was like just ripping on these like NFT archaeologists, you know. And
Yeah, I remember that.
And I did it like it was definitely like, you know, I didn't leave room for nuance, which gives you better engagement. So I think there's room for everything, of course, but I was just basically like, look, man, just because you feel like you found something from the past doesn't mean it means anything, because nobody cared about it back then, and like why should we care about it now? And you're just trying to spin up these narratives, and that's, you know, I think that's a fair take, but like, yeah, I definitely got a lot of heat for that one. But I also got some heat on the same thing. I said the idea of NFTs on Bitcoin, like the ordinals thing, is exciting to me, but nothing that's been created so far has been exciting to me. Like there's not a single thing over there that I actually want to buy. And so I think like maybe we're just, you know, still at that stage. Like we're just so early. Let's wait until something drops. And, you know, if Tyler Hobbs decides to put some art over there, that I would see being valuable, right? And so maybe that's where I think I could probably see myself jumping in, is if they say, hey, we're gonna, you know, some artist is gonna drop a collection of 100 and I like the art, and so, may as well get it over there. But yeah, do you think, are you thinking like, hey, something's going to come out that I'll be excited about? Or are you still like kind of skeptical?
I'm still skeptical. I
Yeah.
think I mean, I still really like the idea. And maybe the other thing was like, you're doing stuff on like Google Docs and stuff. And I got these weird people DMing me. It's like, hey man, like, are you still interested in this? And it's kind of like, okay, I have no way of like verifying if I'm getting scammed or not. So, maybe in the future when they have all the tools and stuff built for it and it's a bit more creator and collector friendly, there could be something there. Maybe it'd be interesting for I would love to like maybe look at exploring to create something on describe something, which I think could be interesting. But for now, I think I looked at it really hard. I really did, and I almost actually bought an ordinal punk for like 4 Bitcoin or something. I'm really glad I didn't.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, okay, I'm just gonna like chill, wait on the sidelines, and see what happens.
No, yeah, that makes sense. Makes me feel a little bit better about my decision as well. So I'm always worried, like, am I fading the next big thing, right? Because I've done it too many times, like every time. So it's always so hard. Like, what do I try and embrace? What do I fade? What do I try and make sure I do next? Dude, this has been amazing. Really appreciate you joining the show. I got my last question, which I like to ask everyone, which is like just general advice for the rest of us trying to make it. Like whether it's somebody brand new or, has been around and just hasn't quite, made that 7-figure sale yet. How do you think, what's some of the best advice you think you can give to us in terms of how to approach this next, year, 2 years?
Yeah, I think my biggest piece of advice would be to have a plan. Like, and when I say have a plan, literally get like a piece of paper and a pen and maybe even sit away from your computer and just write down what your plan is. And your plan might be like, okay, cool. I want a dollar cost average and buy ETH every time it goes 10% lower and not sell it until it gets to 5K. Then I'm going to make loads of money on it. I think it's going to be a 3 or 4x trade. That's my plan. Maybe your plan is like, oh, cool. I want to like make money flipping NFTs, but here's like how much I want to make on each thing. Here's the amount that I have to sell for taxes. Here's how I'm going to approach it. Just write it down. I think the problem is like, you get into this space and there's so much going on, and there's so much FOMO, and people just like dive into things without really thinking about them first. And often if you spend even just 5 minutes thinking about a plan, your game plan, then you can do well. And even if your game plan is like, cool, like 80% of my stuff is going to be DCAing on ETH, and then I'm going to have a 20% allocation of capital pool where I'm just going to do degen stuff and gamble, then that's fine. At least like that's my money that I'm spending gambling, and if I lose it, then that's fine. But it's when you like think you're doing something really smart, but it's actually a gamble, and you didn't go through that process mentally, and then you lose 90%, and you're like, oh fuck, that's really bad, and you get bummed out by it. Like that's when I think you get yourself into trouble. So when I say have a plan, I'm not saying don't gamble, don't degen, because that's, let's be honest, the best part of NFTs. But just make sure you recognize that's what you're doing, and you have the right expectations set for yourself on how much you could make and also how much you could lose.
I love that. I've got a good friend that says like, I just wish that I had a plan, like, and all of us commiserating after the last 2 years of like, we made so much money and then gave it all back. And he was like, all I needed to do was like, just actually have a game plan. And I think that actually applies really well for even specific trades too, right? Like, so if you're like, even when you're degenning, you say like, okay, what's my game plan here? And I'm just slowly getting to that point where I'm like, okay, my game plan is I'm probably going to flip most NFTs for art, for NFT art. And then like, those are what I can hold longer term, or what I at least can theorize that I can hold longer term, and go from there. So amazing episode. Thanks again for joining. Everyone go check out, OSF's got it. He's everywhere. So you can find him on Twitter, whether he's an artist, a fund manager, an analyst, project lead, with Rect Guy. There's just so much stuff happening. Anything else you want to let us know in terms of anything coming up on your end that you want to let people know about?
Not much. I do have this Rec Cities 2 drop, which closes tonight. So if you are interested in that, head over to check the pinned post on my my Twitter, or head over to Nifty Gateway. But that's kind of it, really. Like I have some cool ideas for some more art drops this year. So definitely, I would say like pay attention to the tweets and stuff. And look, if anyone's ever looking for a place to hang out, just come to our Discord. It's dgens discord.gg /degens NFT, and you don't need to own an NFT to be part of it. And I think there's always a good vibe in there. So definitely come get involved. And I'm always in there. I treat it like a big group chat with all my friends. So I'm always in there like DJing and stuff like that. So definitely come vibe in there.
Oh, that's great. I didn't know that. I also suck at Discord. I just need to I just need to choose a community and be like, this is where I'm going to hang out. Instead, I'm a part of 50 and then never look. So that's my big problem. But yeah, I think in terms of the content coming out of Degens, it's phenomenal. I love reading those like daily updates and everything like that. So man, it's amazing. All right, another episode of Node Mode in the books. Thanks again, OSF, for joining. Thank you, everybody in the comments. This was a great show as always, and we will catch you guys next week. I got some other big players coming up soon, so I'm pretty excited. OSF is just kicking off my massive Node Mode bull run here on guests. So thanks again, OSF, and we'll catch everyone soon.